So the meeting is live, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual licensing and enforcement committee meeting on the 3rd of September 2020. I am your chairman, Councillor Joe Wibley. I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who's disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or onto silent. At this Licensing and Enforcement Committee meeting, we are dependent on internet connection and a power supply. So in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. And you'll need to check the committee page on the website for details. Please can we make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made, and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view that agenda can do so by visiting the website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you confirmed you are here, please mute your microphone again.
Councillor Wibley.
I am here.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Councillor Cahill. Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Dent.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Present.
Councillor Hookway. Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Present.
Councillor Pepper. Councillor Pratt. Councillor Brenda Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Wright.
Present.
Councillor Woodward.
Present.
I'll just go back to Councillor Pratt because I think he's just joined us. Councillor Pratt? And Councillor Pratt has joined us.
Yes, present. I'm present.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. I can confirm that we are quorate today.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move to agenda item 1, public speaking. As of when the agenda was published, there were no members of the public registered to speak. Is that still the case?
That's still the case, Chair, yes.
Brilliant, thank you. So agenda item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 27th of July 2020, could you make your comment by raising your blue hand? And if there are no blue hands raised, I will take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. We appear to have no blue hands. So the minutes of the previous meeting are agreed. Agenda item 3, apologies. Do we have any, Chris?
Yes, apologies come from Councillor Jarvis, Councillor Pratt, and Councillor Nick Hookway, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. We'll do this by a roll call.
I'll do it, Chairman. Councillor Wibley.
Okay. None.
Councillor Bloxham.
None.
Councillor Kagan, Councillor Chapman.
None.
Councillor Dent,
None.
Councillor Gazzard,
None.
Councillor Jackson,
None.
Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jeffrey,
None.
Councillor Pratt,
None.
Councillor Taylor,
None.
Councillor Tom Wright,
None.
Councillor Woodward.
None.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 5, matters of urgency. I believe there are none. Please interrupt me if that's not the case. So agenda item 6, any confidential or exempt items, and I believe there are none of those either. So we move on to the main part of the meeting, matters for decision. Agenda item 7, Steve Saunders, the licensing manager, will present his quarterly update. Steve.
Yes, good morning, Chair, and good morning, members. It's good to sort of have contact and speak with many of you that we haven't had that contact for some period of time. I appreciate there is a great deal on the agenda today to go through, and for that reason, it's my intention to pretty much refer to the reports in summary, to address the purpose and the recommendations, and then, if it may suit, because of the amount of items, to then seek any questions or points of clarification. So the first report today that I need to just bring to your attention is the quarterly update that would have occurred many months ago, and as we all know, the world has changed dramatically. The previous meeting of this committee was in relation to a specific item that Henry stood in for in relation to pavement licences. And so the first report under item 7 on the agenda is the quarterly report, an update in relation to the world of licensing in East Devon, the challenges on many of our licence holders and the businesses we work with, and also the challenges to the team. So the recommendation for this report is to bring it to your attention and let it be noted, and I'll raise this point for any points of clarification or questions that the members may have today.
Okay, so could any non-members of the committee, I'm not sure if there are any here actually, but if there are any non-members of the committee, could you please raise your virtual blue hand if you have any questions for Steve? Okay, we'll move on to members of the committee, and I see that Councillor Woodward has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Steve, paragraph 513 refers to the pavement licences and sort of not the expected take-up that you might have had. If I recall from our last meeting, there was reference to taking on a person on a 6-month contract. So will you be reviewing the necessity for somebody to help out with the pavement licences? Does it make any difference, or is it too early to tell at this stage?
Yes, thank you for that. It's a very valid point. We just had no awareness of what this would lead to, or the amount that would literally drop through the withdrawal mat when we took responsibility. By chance, there is a meeting of the Devon managers later this morning, which I'm representing East Devon. We're aware that there are a number of licences already issued by Devon County that come up for renewal imminently. The measure that Devon County put in place was only a temporary one. So from June, Devon County began adopting and issuing the streamlined licences. And then, as we know, in July, the change was made by the government under the Business and Planning Act for it to come over to districts. So there is going to still be that increase in volume. We have a number that we're aware of that are going to come over on renewal to us. And we also have a number, one even yesterday, looking to apply. It's just the case that for the first few weeks or the first month, a number have had their licence in Devon County. The need is still there. It's a very onerous piece of work, and one that is completely new to the team. At the moment, we have very limited support in that capacity on a very casual basis, and we haven't gone for full-time assistant or support on that to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Councillor Alan Dent.
Thanks. I've got a couple of sort of naive questions from a beginner, so forgive me. First of all, when will officers be able to start visiting licensed premises? That's question one. Question two is about outdoor areas of pubs and so on, where they put, like in Exmouth, a big canopy up for people to sit outside. Are they required to have two separate areas for smokers and non-smokers? That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, there is a council risk assessment in being now. It's within the last couple of weeks for essential work to continue. So our work is pretty much based upon the risk assessment that Environmental Health of Sensible managers. As regards a casual sort of proactive approach, that will be when the risk of COVID is reduced. At the moment, the risk assessment requires essential visits, so it would be in relation to a specific complaint and with the measures that we would have to put in place with PPE. In relation to outdoor areas, the Business Planning Act has greatly supported licensed premises in extending their outdoor areas. So what would have happened until July, they would have had to apply to vary licenses, to submit plans, and we expected quite an increase nationally of that type of work, and the government has taken that away. Effectively, provided the landowner approves it, or if the premises or the business already owns that bit of land, they can now step outside until the September 2021. The situation in relation to smoking, it is solely a matter of indoors. However, we have sought some guidance in relation to smoking inside permanent structures such as marquees that wouldn't have any outlet or any way of allowing that smoke to dissipate. So at the moment, the guidance is it is still prohibited inside a licensed premises. And if we should receive any reports or complaints that smoking is inside a structure where it can't likely dissipate, then it will be a case of probably Environmental Health having to follow that up, if that clarifies.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We have one more person. Oh, no, we have two people wishing to speak. First of all, Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, is there any chance that you could give us any numbers, the numbers that you've received for pavement licenses? Because obviously in Exmouth there have been quite a few which have gone out for consultation, and councillors don't know whether they've received approval or not. Thank you.
Yeah, so the update of today is there were two applications to licensing. So licensing deal with the areas on highways and public paths. So the application that was sent for Prezzo didn't progress for reasons that have been fed back to the town council. And the response from the town council on that application was much appreciated. It supported officers when we reviewed it. However, the second application for the York Inn has been approved this week, and we're in the process of updating the parties that contacted us in relation to that. There are a number of locations on the Strand. These are subject to sitting out consents that our street team manage. So the areas within the edge and the centre of the Strand at the moment are sitting out consents organised by Nick Christo and his team. We know that there is a further application due to come in for the Strand on Devon Highways land that we're going to manage. And also, as I've mentioned, we have double figures on the handover and renewals that are coming over from Devon County shortly. So we do expect more to be across the district. We've had inquiries from premises in Beer and Sidmouth. So I expect the volume is going to increase and there will be further consultations that will come out to your town councils in the weeks ahead.
Thank you very much, Steve. We have one more. We have somebody at the door. We also have one more person who wishes to speak. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve, can I ask, have you got any update on licensing being able to go to premises and withdraw the license for not applying with COVID rules yet? I know they were looking at it. I don't know if you've got an update for us on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, there is government guidance, and that guidance has changed every 2 to 4 weeks as we've been through lockdown. Certainly from July when they reopened, it is pretty much intelligence or evidence led, and pretty much it would be either driven by a specific complaint from the public or more likely from the police. And in East Devon, we haven't had a specific reason to go to a review of a existing licence. It has happened in some other areas. It's certainly happened in other areas across the country, but that would be a very serious measure. It would be convening the licensing subcommittee, and we would have to have clear and specific evidence, probably police-led, of serious breaches. We're satisfied that the premises that we've engaged in, we've got around 500 licensed premises, are conducting the test and trace. They've got measures in place, but we are also open to reports, and we do follow them up. We have had some from the public about concerns, but at the moment, I would say we haven't got anything to start contacting members of this committee to ask for a subcommittee for a full licence review at this stage.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Very good question, and one that I would have asked myself. Okay, Giles, do we need to vote on this, or can we just put it as noted?
Just a show of hands to wave it through would be.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so voting will be done by committee members with either a green yes or a red no. Actually, no. Forget that. We will show blue hands. Could you just raise your hand if you're happy to note that? Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Steve. We move to agenda item 8, the Licensing Act policy consultation. And we go back to Steve to give his report. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, this is quite a significant, I'd say, a huge document, really, in its content. The reasons for this are that every 5 years, each licensing authority across the country has to update and consider its own licensing policy in relation to the Licensing Act. So this is the work we do in relation to pubs, restaurants, clubs, all of which have a bar or the license to sell alcohol. It is a legal requirement, so we have to do this by law. There are some policies that we have that aren't that specific, and the reason we do this, it guides applicants, it guides solicitors who apply on behalf of new businesses, and it also guides public and other authorities about how this council expects licensed premises to conduct themselves across the district. So there are 2 appendices that I need to bring your attention to. The recommendation is today that this committee considers the draft policy that officers have worked on and updated literally over the last probably two years or more, and we're seeking approval to start the consultation after today. What that effectively means, this isn't the finished item, so we've done this each 5-year cycle, and it may be that we'll get national solicitors will contact us in relation to their requirements. The police may have views, and there may be local businesses Republicans that will also raise issues. So what the team will do when we come back in November, we'll have an appendix that will show all those responses and those that officers consider are really salient and necessary to update the policy in relation to. We will also be going out to the towns and all the councils as well as part of this consultation process. So it's a weighty but very important process. In Appendix A, we've specified the primary sort of organisations, the authorities that we engage with too, that we will go out and consult with should the approval be given. And initially, in the report that Chris sent out, there was a very, very busy Appendix B that showed really all the items in red fonts that have been the amendments and the changes over certainly the last 2 years, if not longer. We've taken out a great deal of duplication, so there are things such as the CCTV policy that was just not specifically required. Things have moved on and since that standard in 2013. And also there have been a huge number, probably over the last 15 years, we've had the highest number of changes in legislation. We've had changes under the Deregulation Act that has removed any requirement for personal alcohol licences. It's changed the number of temporary events each year. We've had the Immigration Act for right to work checks, and we've had revised guidance from the Home Office as well. So all of these aspects have been included, and duplication has been removed really to support going forward. The other key areas also are the geographic area has changed. Pretty much over the last 5 years, the inclusion and relevance of Cranbrook Town was far less than it is currently, and the growth that town is going through. And the Vice Chair is rightly asked that be reflected in the geographic profile. We've included environmental factors in the policy, and we've also included some of the cultural issues. So there is a revised, clean Appendix B that, if you haven't seen, it only was circulated or published yesterday. And the new Appendix B that Chris kindly added yesterday will be the version that we seek approval to go out and consult on. And then to bring back the update to the members in November. We're in an unusual position in that we're not the last in Devon to do this, but we're neither the first. So some districts and cities have already started, and some will finish and start theirs just after us as well. But it's usually around the same sort of 3-month period that each authority has to get this out. It should be for a significant period of time, and that's why it was quite important that we had an earlier meeting today to give sufficient time for this to be out for consultation and then come back for your attention. And it will be at that point as well, during the consultation and later on in November, that you may wish to sort of have queries and points to raise yourself. I'll certainly take any questions at this point. As I say, it's a very lengthy document, but it is also one that, as licensing members, you may wish to also spend further time in the future on a clean version, in appraising yourselves and considering any responses also during the consultation period. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. So that's a huge amount of work that's been done there, and I'd like to commend all of Steve's team for carrying that out. So yeah, effectively just to remind members that we're not voting on whether or not the licensing policy should be adopted, but merely whether or not it should go out for consultation. But as Steve has said, he will answer any questions you may have at this point. So first of all, we'll go out to non-committee members. I see Councillor Paul Miller wishes to speak. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Saunders. It's a very lengthy report. I think I understood some of it. I don't think I understood all of it, but clearly a huge amount of work has been put into it. I note that in England, unlike Scotland, licensing policies can't take public health considerations into its policy. And I wondered whether you, Mr. Steve, you knew whether the government were considering a change in approach on this, because given the pandemic, I'll speak personally. Councillor Whibley shared a photograph of a local club in Exmouth where there was no regard for social distancing outside. So licensing arrangements, in my view, should be tied, as it is in Scotland, to better public health outcomes. I mean, we know how alcohol misuse not only causes crime and disorder, but hospital admissions and poor health outcomes in communities. So I wonder whether now would be the right time. It probably isn't relevant to this item, but it's a question for you, Steve. Whether this council and other councils should be lobbying government for a change in approach to ensure that our licensing policies can be strengthened to prevent the kind of thing that Councillor Whibley and I have seen in Exmouth in recent weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Steve, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I thank Councillor Miller for the point he's raised. It's very valid. Over the last 2 years, the government made changes to consultees. The last one being the Border Agency Immigration Authority being included, and they are prepared to adopt specific consultees and authorities as the need arises. On page 37 of the what I refer to the amended and clean policy document, it gives the list of the responsible authorities that we have to consult on any new licence and also on any adapted premises licence. And Public Health at Devon County Council are one of those consultees. There have been meetings in the last 18 months I've attended along with Andrew Ennis, where Public Health Devon have made it known that they wish to contribute more in relation to into licensed premises, and also the impact on perhaps the National Health and various other authorities and bodies around the country, and also the public effectively as well. So they are a body that we consult. There are statistics that in the past have been produced about districts and areas that have higher incidence, and also that our public health and wellbeing strategy is starting to focus on. And I've made comment, or we've made comment in relation to that as a growing piece of work, and I think that is in the forward. But now with our environmental health teams leading on public wellbeing, we do see a natural link between that strategy and also the licensing policy. So yeah, Councillor Miller, I do see this being a growing area, and I would like to think that not just in the next 5 years, but also perhaps in the next 12 months, that the public health aspect of licensing will change quite significantly. If that answers the question, thank you.
Chairman, sorry for your forbearance. Can I come back very quickly and ask a supplementary, and then I'll shut up?
Yes, you may, Councillor Miller. You may.
No, thanks for that. I hadn't noticed actually that Public Health and Devon County were actually consulted. I attended a training session put on by the Local Government Association a few weeks ago, which was all about alcohol and COVID-19 and licensing policies and public health policies across the country. And one of their recommendations to councils was to try to start creating an alcohol strategy to sit alongside their licensing policies and to give it a bit more teeth. Is that something that could be taken into consideration? Probably not in time for this licensing policy to be implemented, but perhaps straight afterwards and to inform the next one.
Yeah, thank you for that. I also appreciate, Councillor Miller, you did share that email, and I was copied into it in relation to the impact on alcohol and the the issues in relation to significant issues in relation to society. I think that will be a strategic development, and without sort of speaking on behalf of our SNT, but certainly it's something that I've been involved in more over the last 12 to 18 months. I think over the next 12 months with all of Devon and the work that's going on, I can see that being a real development. And yeah, there's no reason why this authority shouldn't be part of that change and drive it forward really in relation to better public health.
Thank you.
Cheers, Steve. Are we done, Councillor Miller?
Thankfully, yes. Thanks,
Okay.
Chair, for your forbearance.
You are most welcome, Councillor Miller. We will now move on to any members of the committee who wish to speak. First up is Councillor Tom Wright. Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's following on from what Paul said. I do note that very much our policy is designed to promote, encourage economic development in our late night economy, entertainment and hospitality trade. But we don't seem to pay any account at all for the cost of that trade. For example, the cost of policing, the cost to our health service when people end up in A&Es, having fallen over, having been involved in fights, having been involved in other incidents. And although there is a deeper, less sort of obvious cost to the health service of people, if you like, who are passive sufferers due to alcohol, people who drink too much and get liver problems and all the other health associated problems. But I'm just wondering, during the first part of the lockdown, people weren't going to pubs, people weren't getting drunk, falling down in the streets, they weren't fighting. And I'm just wondering if we could actually have some research carried out, even regionally with the RD&E and our other health facilities, to see what the, if you like, the cost benefit was in not having to treat those sorts of problems. Because I know we do encourage our hospitality and entertainment trade, and I know that people coming on holiday look on going to pubs and things as part of the holiday, but that is at some significant cost, both in policing and health. And I think we sometimes lose sight of that. And in fact, our policy, I think in a number of cases in our policy, we wish to encourage the development of such entertainment, but I don't think we ever really rationalise what the true cost of that is in terms of the costs of people cleaning up the mess caused by people overindulging. And while I am on, so I don't have to come back on another project, another topic, I'm looking at the top of page 10 and page 11, where we're talking about the impacts of the smoking policy, if you like, creating bars almost on our pavements. I'm not talking about the current situation, but those smaller pubs that don't have beer gardens, don't have anywhere to accommodate smokers. And it does cause annoyance and obstruction and interference when you're trying to walk past the front door of a pub when the pavement is totally blocked with smokers. What I would like to see, although we do say there's a responsibility on the premises supervisor to manage the effects of people smoking outside, the one nuisance which isn't covered is the nuisance of litter. We must all have walked past pubs in our town centres sort of early in the morning to find them absolutely covered with dog ends. Can we actually put a phrase in or something in there to say that the premises supervisor have a responsibility to tidy up outside their premises at the close of business? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Two very different, and one huge point about health and everything, and the other one about smoking. Steve, is they're kind of both things that you can take forward to consider during the consultation. Do you want to come back on either of them now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I may, I've made notes of those points, and I think they're extremely valid. Certainly the litter aspect, when the legal team and ourselves are looking at the pavement licence legislation, we looked at litter as a condition, and I've made a note really to look at that in the draft policy going forward. And Councillor White's quite specific there, because the relaxation and the support to the licensed hospitality industry is allowing them to really step out of their sort of areas. There are going to be some consequences. There are going to be greater spaces. There are going to be more outdoor smoking and obviously litter as well. So I'm happy to take that up with environmental health colleagues who will be consulting as well. But also going to the other points, we as a licensing service and licensing team, we have continued contact with police licensing during the lockdown period, and I would agree that the reduction on policing, the reduction on crime and disorder as a result of clubs being closed in city centres such as Plymouth and across the counties of Devon and Cornwall were massive. I think the police had a far quieter period of time. I'm at a Devon licensing group meeting tomorrow, and I'll raise that with the police if there is some specific feedback that they can give us, because they did provide some details anecdotally in relation to the drop in the effect of licensing. But also we know that is changed with the greater emphasis and support from the government as well. So I'll take that forward tomorrow, and I've made a note to that myself. I think as well, just lastly on that point, I mentioned with the health and wellbeing strategy with Helen Wareham and Andrew Ennisby involved as well. I think it's a valid point about really trying to seek more data from Devon Health, from the NHS, because there are authorities such as the police and the NHS that pick up the problems, don't they? So it's work in progress, but I have made notes and we'll report back accordingly.
Can I just come back, Chairman, please?
Yes, of course you can, Councillor Wright.
It's a very short point. I know some time ago we took the view as a licensing committee not to actively seek, if you like, the late night levy that we could impose on licensees or on licensed premises in areas where there is significant disorder. If we can actually now evaluate the cost in savings to policing because the premises weren't operating, it gives us grounds to reconsider that if we find this cost savings were significant, it might be that when these premises do open again, it might be a chance for us to say, well, we know what it didn't cost us when you were shut. We know what it costs us when you are open, so you're going to have to contribute to those costs. I think that's something which we should now actively pursue, because I don't see why ordinary members of the public should pick up the cost of people turning out of premises late at night, drunk, falling about and causing genuine mayhem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright, and I would imagine that Steve Saunders has written that down. Okay, we have one more member of the committee who wishes to speak, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. There seems to be a trend in past years, and I think this is going to make it very difficult for us, in that the younger generation, they tend to drink at home while they're getting ready to go out, and then they get taxis at 9:30, 10 o'clock, go down to the pub, and they'll go into the pub or the club. They'll buy one drink, and then the alcohol they have consumed previously to going out starts to take effect. So I don't know if we can blame business premises that sell alcohol on the health of the generation that are falling about out in the pavement. A lot of it, they've bought the alcohol from a supermarket, and this seems to be the trend, and they do exactly the same when they go abroad on holiday. They drink in the hotel in their rooms, and then they go out to the clubs because it costs them less. And it seems to be a cost factor from the younger ones I've spoken to. So I don't honestly know what licensing can do about this, but I don't think we can put all the blame on licensed premises, because when someone walks through the door, they don't know that they've previously drunk half a bottle of vodka. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. We have one more member of the group, Vice Chair, Councillor Kim Bloxham.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve, I just wanted to say thank you for including Cranbrook in the geographical area as I'd asked for. I have read the cleaned up copy, and thank you very much. That covers all that we've discussed. So I just wanted to sort of say thank you for responding to that request, because it is important that Cranbrook is recognised in the document.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bloxham. So now, do we have a proposer? If we need to remember that we are going to vote on whether or not this goes forward and is put to consultation. So there's not a final document. So if we could have a proposer and a seconder for that.
I'm happy to propose it, Joe.
Okay, Councillor Bloxham has proposed it. Do we have a seconder?
Joe, Steve Gazzard's got his hand up.
Okie dokie. So
Mr. Chairman, I did actually, I thought making a proposal that in the bit about licensees or premises supervisors being responsible for the conduct of people out in the immediate area of their premises, that should have included some reference to litter. So I would like that added as under that section, whatever it was, on page 11, that there should be some reference to the responsibility for the state of the pavements and the litter outside their premises.
Okay, I think at this point, that's something that will come, if we put this out for consultation, that's then something that will get added later. Am I correct on that, Steve?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. Also, I'll just need to revisit the long list of conditions as well. I feel there are some specific conditions on it, and that's something that we really can sort of drive forward with premises in the future. But yes, that will be when we next meet.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, Councillor Dent, are you okay with that? So it goes out to consultation. Then Steve and everybody will bear in mind these things, and when it comes back again, that will hopefully be included in it.
I think you were getting Wright and Dent mixed up then, Chairman, but I'm happy with that.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Voting will be done by committee members using either the green yes or the red no buttons on your participants list. Could you place your votes now?
Thank you, Chair. That's 11 votes for. That is the total vote.
Okay, so that motion is carried. And again, thank you to Steve for the huge amount of work that went into that, and will continue to go into that. So we move to agenda item 9, the taxi fare tariff, something which has been going on for more than a year, and it appears it has reached the end of the process that it needs to. So just a quick note to any newer members of the committee, there may be things in this which you have a problem with or you disagree with, but as Steve will explain, a long process of consultation has been gone through to get to this point. So I will hand over to the licensing manager, Steve Saunders, again. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I will just briefly touch on the method of how we've got to this point in relation to the taxi fares. So it is the licensing authority and the council across the country that set the fares that taxis can charge of the public. And those fares have to be a subject of a full public consultation and with a specific procedure that we've carried out up until this point now. The history of this is that the taxi trade in East Devon has been split for a number of years until recently, in that a percentage of the trade didn't want to increase fares. They wanted to keep prices low, and then anecdotally in Exmouth they were trying to undercut, whereas other parts of the district, for example, Honiton or Seaton, where they have longer runs, their work may be different, were seeking an increase on the fares that could be charged. It resulted in a ballot going back some time ago. We had to actually ballot the whole of our list of licence holders, and that allowed us to assess the fact that there was a majority in favour of actually increasing the fares. However, just briefly as well, we were also aware that the public felt that the costs of hiring a taxi in East Devon, as in most places in Devon, are still relatively high. And so the reflection of what we consulted on is shown in Appendix A today amongst the documents. The final piece of the jigsaw was that back prior to the last meeting of this committee, the only trade association of taxi drivers that meets and operates in Exmouth met with officers, and they were in support of just increasing the initial costs of the daytime rate that would be under Tariff 1. So it would basically give those taxis operating around the town or wherever during the daytime an increase, and we took that on board and consulted. Really just before lockdown occurred, the public notices went out into the newspapers across the district, and we also posted those notices outside relevant offices as well. Suffice to say, there wasn't an objection. So if an objection occurs, we would have to come back, and it would be down to the members today to consider going up, down or sideways on the table we have. However, because of that reason, effectively we are at the point now as a council to say we've done the utmost on our consulting, we've been through the legal processes, and we have reached a tariff and table of fares that the public can be charged, and which from this point on, under the recommendation, should be the table to adopt, to go out to all our licensed taxis to let them know that this is coming into effect, which they are aware of and which they've been waiting for. What we've added in, and to try and avoid being in a situation that this licensing authority has been in for some years, is the split decisions in the future. So under Appendix B, for consideration of the members today, we've, as officers, identified a structure that we would like to build in that there'll be an annual review. And that also, as you'll see under Appendix B, the trade can also put forward a motion if there are parts of it that feel another increase is required. However, we will only consider one application for review on an annual basis. Where we would want to be is potentially in December or January. Some members of the trade starting again that they feel the rise hasn't been high enough, and we go around every 2 or 3 months. So Appendix A is the tariff today that has been out to consultation and is ready to be implemented. And Appendix B, I would ask the members to consider as an annual review and an annual procedure that the officers will bring back and work with the taxi trade also to put a bit more structure behind it. And that's where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Do we have any non-committee members who wish to speak? And okay, Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve, it's a rather uncomfortable question to ask, but with regard to the soiled taxis issue, what is defined as soiled? Is it just spilling a bit something on the floor, or does it go further than that? Do we have a working definition of what that includes? Because it wouldn't be fair, I think, for taxis to be fining the public for cleaning the entire taxi for for minor spillages, so to speak.
Yeah, if I may, that's a very, very salient point. We perhaps mediate a couple of these each year, and usually it's the result of a late night web alert in one way or another, soiling, usually as a result of the alcohol returns. All the money they pay for it ends up in the back of the taxi. So perhaps once or twice a year, we do occasionally get members of the public who will contact us, and we could effectively update our website. I take the point to let the public be aware that if they feel that they are being charged this fee by a taxi provider, that that option is out there for us to get involved and to mediate. Generally, the taxi trade that we have are quite professional in this, and they perhaps even want to keep that custom. They might have 5 people that they take out regularly. So I'm quite satisfied they manage it quite professionally, and sometimes it's a bit of a whip round. But I would take the point. I think we could add to the website that if the public feels that they were ever put under pressure to pay something they shouldn't, that we can step in and mediate on that.
Can I come back very briefly, Chair, very briefly, to ask, do I assume, Steve, that the soiling of taxis has been increasing in recent years and has increased since the last, in the last year or two? If so, that is surely significant cause for concern.
There isn't any data on it, and I think it's pretty much anecdotal, as I say, on those perhaps 1 or 2 occasions we get somebody contact us. We haven't had, we work really closely, we see the trade and the normal circumstances weekly on the ranks, and we haven't had that fed back to us. I think it's more the fact that it is generally just that occasion when somebody's on the way home and it occurs, and it hasn't been anything of an increase. The main increase that we had last year, and as was referred to, was more of the actual assaults and the spike in aggression towards drivers. But it's something as well. We do have contact with the Exmouth Association. I'll feed back on them and perhaps maybe start trying to assess if that's a growing trend as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. We'll now move to committee members. Councillor Wright. Got it right this time.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking at Appendix B, which is quite clear and easily understood, but I just think it might be tidier if points 9 and 10 are encapsulated in the first point, number 1, because you can read all the way down that and then only find out that you can't do it because 12 months hasn't elapsed. If that, I think 9 and 10 could actually be encapsulated in 1 as part of, if you like, the introduction, just something that no review can be asked for within 12 months of a previous review. That I think that is slightly less cumbersome. Only a minor point, otherwise I think it's a very sensible proposal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wright. We will now hear from Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask Steve, we did have problems, and you've just mentioned as assaults and verbal abuse on drivers, and we were looking at the CCTV for in-cabs, which we thought would be for the protection of drivers as well as passengers. Can you give me and the rest of the committee an update on this, and where we've got on CCTV in-cab?
Yes. Would it be possible if I can just kind of park that one in relation to the forthcoming paper on the agenda in relation to standards and taxi policy? There is an area in relation to CCTV, and I'll make a note just to update on them, because it's one of the factors that we're going to have to consider as an authority under the next paper that's coming up in the report, if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you, Chapman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to really support what Councillor Tom Wright said about 9 and 10 going up to the top, because that would make it more sensible. And I'd just like to move adoption of Appendix B, if I may, Chair.
Okay, thank you. With those changes in place, Councillor Gazzard.
Yes, please.
Okay, so and Councillor Wright, have you proposed that as well, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, I would like to. It's you know, just one an additional sentence at 1 would remove 9 and 10 and make it easier from the outset. It will tell you immediately when the taxi trade could make such an application.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder. So with those changes of order in the points in Appendix B, we will vote on that now by using either your green yes button or your no red button.
Thank you, Chair. That's 11 votes for, which is the total vote.
Thank you very much. So that motion is carried. We now move on to item number 10, the taxi policy. And again, we return to the star of the show, licensing manager, Steve Saunders.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We're nearly there, and again, it's another clear update and lots of change in the licensing world, hence this situation. So last year, the government had a informal consultation around the country about improving the standards for taxis and private hire across the country. This authority, the officers responded along with Giles, our legal rep, and we put back a view on how we felt this authority was conducting its business. So the Home Office have taken that across all district councils and city councils across the country and have now released national standards that they feel should be pretty much adopted in the future going forward. So the purpose of the report today is to bring this new proposed national standard of taxi requirements to the attention of the members today. We're asking, as obviously nothing for that it is noted as a cursory update, and also what we've introduced is that the key changes that the government and the Home Office are asking each authority to bring in are under Appendix A of this report. So there's a number of factors that, you know, if we took at a red, amber, green, this authority, without becoming complacent, is doing already. We have it as a green in our existing taxi policy that we introduced in 2017 and we've updated. We do the DBS checking, which is a bit of an issue for the drivers because sometimes they have to wait to get their clearance on convictions. We do the medicals, and we have the standards that the government are proposing. What the government and the Home Office are now proposing is that all authorities that aren't perhaps meeting that, which would be a surprise, but all authorities have now a national template under Appendix A of really what we should be looking at. One of the aspects that I'll just briefly draw your attention to is under number 14. We have adopted a requirement for safeguarding awareness, but with social distancing and the COVID situation, we're actively having to look as a Devon group now to try and make that an online virtual process. And it's really just briefing the taxi and private hire trade who effectively are eyes and ears out in the public late at night as to what they can do and how can they report safeguarding. And another aspect, as Councillor Chapman rightly raised, is the consideration now to councils and licensing authorities making of CCTV, but also the audio side of it in vehicles as mandatory. This council hasn't had the data to suggest that it is a requirement for the safety of passengers. We haven't had the reports over the last however many years that drivers are predatory or conducting behaviour that they shouldn't be conducting. And equally, we haven't had the number of complaints despite a complaints process on our website from the public. That's not to say that we don't get incivility, and we do manage the complaints quarterly as performance objective for the team on how we address them and feed that back to scrutiny. But what this authority is going to have to consider is whether we need to consider imposing CCTV on each vehicle licence holder, and it will be something that the officers will bring back for consideration in greater detail in November. What I will make you aware of is that the units have to also cover audio recording, which means assaults verbally and verbal abuse have to be recorded, and that goes both ways. It goes for the customers and the drivers. But those units are at least £500 to £600, and they have to be a mandatory unit that meets the Office of Surveillance Commissioner. So there's a lot to factor in about whether we go down that route. I think for today, I appreciate there hasn't been a significant amount of time for members to consider Appendix A and where this authority stands in the big scheme of things. But as officers, what we are proposing to do now, in line with the other Devon authorities, is to pad this out, to give a greater understanding, and then bring back some real key recommendations of where this authority needs to address those points. There is an expectation that the Home Office will receive an update by January about how all authorities are going to administer and adopt the standard conditions. So it's quite timely that we report to the members today, that you have that time to consider it in the weeks and months ahead, and then we really set our stall out in November in good time to go back to the Home Office. It's pretty much where we are, and I'll just now open that up.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any non-committee members? Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Me again. On the DBS check part, which I warmly welcome, I think it's very important, to be had every 6 months. Whilst I appreciate, Steve, these aren't firm recommendations quite yet, may I caution the fact that if these costs were passed on to the taxi drivers themselves, this could become quite unmanageable for them. Many of them are self-employed, and I'm not sure whether this would refer to the enhanced check, which I believe is more expensive, much more expensive than the basic one. So I just wondered, is it something I assume this is something taxi drivers have to pick up the bill themselves. It's not something, DBS checks aren't, the cost of which aren't absorbed by the council, is it? So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Miller. There is potentially a quick hit on this. I think this is going to be one of those that the Home Office will potentially require a more regular checking process. So a couple of other authorities in Devon have made it a policy requirement that all licence holders sign up to the online checking service. What that means is if we propose that in November, for the sake of an extra £13 a year, the licence holder can give us their permission and their login details, and we do an online check, which is going to save every 6 months them coming in with their identity and the sort of the bigger cost on an annual basis. What that will help with as well, as officers, I think we would really struggle to manage 150 drivers every 6 months, checking it fully. So the online check-in at a very small cost, I think, is something that we can look at as an authority, and I'll report back on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Do we have anybody from the committee who wishes to comment, or do we have a proposer or a seconder so that we can note that the committee notes Steve's report? Okay, would anybody like to propose that we note that report? Councillor Gazzard, you wish to speak.
No, Chair, I was just going to propose.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. So if you use your green tick or your red cross.
Thank you, Chair. That's 11 votes for, which is the total vote.
Thank you very much. So that policy report is noted. We move on to the final item on the agenda, 11, the COVID-19 taxi policy. And I'm delighted to inform you that we have a special speaker who we've not seen all the time. Oh no, it's licensing manager Steve Saunders again. Sorry, Steve, you're being overworked today.
Thank you, Chair. It's absolutely fine. It's I think it's just one of those things with condensing all this into one meeting. But yeah, we're nearly there and appreciate everybody's time. So this is the update to members today on really how we had to act and adopt as soon as the COVID situation arose. It's only right that we did bring it back to the members to make you aware of some steps we had to take very early around March time and into April. So the recommendation is really that the members note the temporary adopted policy that we had to take in as an emergency course of action under Officer Powers with the approval of the Chair back in April, but also to approve continuing use at the moment. This document, which sits in Appendix A, it does sit alongside our existing full taxi policy. And just to bring members up to date today, we're going through quite a heavy period of vehicle and driver renewals. There's still a large percentage that renew in October as a bit of a throwback to years gone by. The situation is we're still hearing from some that the trade isn't out there for them. Not all have managed to sort of gain the custom they previously had. People aren't going to airports as such. So there are still some seeking to take up the opportunity to restore their vehicles, to take them off the road, to defer the renewal time. This is really because we just can't legally extend a license for set periods. We have specific periods of 12 months to 3 years on certain licenses. And we know that it has helped. It's helped a number of the trade just to meet the costs without having to pay for a license and have it start for a period of time that they're not actually working. I think that the best way forward is as officers to bring this back again in November. And if the trade has started picking up the customs out there, it may be that then we ask the members to review it and potentially stand it down. But for today, it's been a really helpful document and strategy that's helped the trade, and felt it's important to make members aware. And also just to thank the councillors involved in the process when the trade really was going through it. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Steve. We have one person wishing to speak. That is Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, just it seems contradictory. The purpose of the report, just in the headings, this is all very semantic rather than any substance. It says, and seeking approval of this committee to end adoption of the policy, and yet the recommendation is to approve continuing use. So is there something, is there a not? Or is that correct, Steve?
Thank you. I'm going to hold my hands up and probably say that's a typo in the report and shouldn't be to end at this stage. The recommendation is that. So yeah, it's to continue with it and to review further down the line in November.
Okay. So do we need to change the purpose of the report as to seeking approval to continue adoption of the policy?
Sorry, it's legal here. So if we
Giles, you've gone quiet.
He was having internet trouble earlier. Steve, can you just confirm the word?
Sorry, yeah, I've got that. I'm here.
Ah, there we go. Hi, Giles.
Say it again, Giles, you dropped off. Giles, are you there or gone? Steve, can you confirm what the wording should be?
Yes, I'm quite satisfied with the recommendation that again today is to note the temporary adoption, but also to approve the continuing use alongside the full taxi policy, and to review this at a later date. So the point 1 and 2 in the recommendation are those that we would wish to put before the members today.
Okay, so bearing that change in mind, do we have anybody who is willing to propose and second that we adopt this?
I'll propose.
Thank
Chairman.
you, thank you, Councillor Woodward. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, Steve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Voting will be done using either the green yes or the red no buttons at the bottom of the participants list. So bearing in mind that slight change to the wording, could you vote now, please?
Thank you, Chair. That is 10 votes for, 11 votes for now. That's the total vote.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And I'd just like again to thank Steve and all of his team for the huge amount of work that's gone into everything within this that we've discussed in this meeting. That brings the meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public watching online, for taking part. Can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or live, and until then, your comments will be live to the public. Cheers.